Hello and welcome to PubShorts episode 63. I am the Walrus. We are keeping the streak of naming episodes by your favorite band, the Beatles. All right.
They're not my favourite band, but they're very important. And you're not a walrus, by the way, KK. Uh, yeah, it's one of these songs. Everybody knows. I've got all sorts of versions of the song. From people like Oasis and Frank Zappa did a version of the song. And this episode delves into the absurd extremes of research integrity.
Hmm.
Joke papers riddled with irrelevant citations, complex gendered retraction trends. So we're looking at how some of these extremes impact on the output
Yeah.
of scientific research.
But before we start with discussing the news stories and articles, let's introduce ourselves. My name is Dr. KK. I'm the Innovation Officer at Trinka and Inago. And Tony, please introduce yourself as well as the Pop Shots, as well as where the
Yeah,
people can find. Yeah.
I'm Tony O'Rourke, and I'm Vice President for Partnerships here at Inago. And welcome to PubShorts if this is your first time. This is a regular, I'd say weekly, at least weekly, bi-weekly episodic podcast where KK and I discuss the recent research articles on the topic of research publishing from a perspective of technology, from the perspective of integrity, and also looking at some of the political implications of some of the things that happened in the world recently.
Excellent. Thanks, Tony. So,
You can find. I'm sorry, I should have added.
yeah.
If you'd like to watch all previous 62 episodes, I can't believe there've been 62 episodes already. You can go to the Inago channel on YouTube, and you will find the Pub Shorts playlist. And please subscribe to the channel. Press share with your colleagues and friends, and like or dislike. It's up to you. We're quite happy with whatever comments. And please send us suggestions via the channel or to us directly
Yep.
for topics for future podcasts.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. And we start off with our first story from a vendor called Sitelity. Tony, you've said that you are not too familiar with them, but they have many research integrity type features. So the story it's from their blog. It's titled "New Data Pipelines to Improve Timeliness and Transparency on the Latest Retractions." So in general, Sitelity focus on scientific integrity for publishers. They have a product called Argos, which is mentioned here in the menu, that tracks retractions. And so Argos provides real-time accurate retraction data. So, but they have engineered a new data. No, sorry, they have engineered new data pipelines for better tracking, and it identifies more retractions than the other sources. They've updated the Citility risk score as well, and institutions can detect problematic research trends, and journal editors can gain visibility regarding the potential risks. So overall, good story in terms of flagging research
I
integrity
think it's
risk.
a good story, and as you know, KK, we've been providing tools that will also help publishers to detect possible research integrity issues. Our Inago Reports tool, for example, does just that.
Yep.
It looks at the integrity of articles. With regard to retractions, I mean, one of the report features that we have is that it was a retracted article feature.
Mm-hmm.
So when an editor is checking a paper, they can see which of those papers have been retracted. I think that it strikes me that to an extent, though, this process should be happening earlier. This process should be happening at the point at which the author is writing the paper, and not just when the editor is verifying the paper.
Right.
So if this can be extended for the author, so that they can avoid using retracted papers and effectively, potentially undermining their research in their paper, I think there'll be a huge value there. But say in the meantime, if you need those sort of checking tools, then obviously Citility is giving an example of something doing specifically around retractions, but we have a broader suite of RI tools that can support the publisher.
And another thing I would like to bring up is this is after all a tool for publishers for screening. So if publishers have a custom requirement, we have a bunch of features in Inago reports. But if suppose a publisher is looking for any custom bespoke solution that fits their specific publication needs, we are willing to work with them, right, Tony?
Of course,
Yeah.
absolutely. We look forward to hearing from you.
Right. All right. So next story, a very interesting hyper prolific authorship unveiling the extent of extreme publishing in the publish or perish era. So, this is a research paper itself. This study investigates the hyper prolific authorship driven by this culture, and these hyper prolific authors are those publishing at an extremely high rate identified by the discipline specific statistical thresholds, and the article examines patterns such as sudden publication bursts, concentration in particular journals, and expansive co-authorship networks. It discusses both individual and structural drivers, including academic incentives, national policies, and technological advances that may lead to such extreme output. So interestingly, Tony, the analysis covers over 2 million scholars globally, 2017 to 2019, and compares publication behaviors across various disciplines and countries. And findings show that hyperprolific authors tend to have larger collaboration networks and, on an average, a higher citation impact, though their maximum impact can be lower. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting study. We ourselves are working on ways to detect any anomalous publication trends and citation trends ourselves. But this gives a lot of sort of interesting, findings regarding how the impact is. And I was surprised to find that even if you're hyper prolific, your citation impact still remains high. I would have expected that if you publish too many things too frequently, maybe you won't get as many citations because your research is sort of spread out. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, anything that will reduce the kind of that type of salami slicing type publishing that used to be very common.
Right.
So if there's like 6 stages to a research process, what publishers want to see is one paper that will cover, the whole process from the theory through to the application. Whereas, historically you'd get one paper for the methodology, one paper for the theory, one paper for the experiment, one paper for the philosophy behind the experiment, and they would each appear in different journals. The only kind of concern I have about this is, unfortunately, there's no standardization in terms of when an author should be cited on the paper. Because I mean, I've been used to seeing, I'm quite familiar with seeing heads of department being named on every paper.
Right.
That's for certain countries where the practice is, if you're from my lab, then you have to name me, even though I've got nothing to do with the experiment. You have to name me as a co-author on your paper, or even sometimes as a lead author, because I am the head of the department.
Right.
And that is kind of skews the sort of the findings to a certain extent. But there are some extraordinarily prolific authors, some of extraordinarily high quality, of course, as well. But you do wonder if they can do more with less.
Right. So this graph shows that there is the spectrum of researchers from different countries having different sort of hyper prolificity I guess scores as per the research. So you can see that it varies across, and it depends on the government policies as well as general research culture within a nation. That's very interesting. And what you mentioned, Tony, is ghost or gift authorship. That's something that is frowned upon, and
it's frowned upon, but it's still a practice that's been carried out.
Right. All right. So moving on to the next story. It's from Retraction Watch. We have got a bunch of articles from Retraction Watch in this episode. COVID-19 vaccine myocarditis paper raises questions about what earns post-publication peer review. To be fair, this is a confusing timeline, but I'll try to explain it. So this article discusses a COVID-19 vaccine myocarditis paper and the post-publication peer review it faced. So Sage Journal published an expression of concern about the paper due to issues with methodology and conflicts of interest. The paper that was published in the journal Therapeutic Advances in Drug Safety in January 2024 had been previously published and removed from an Elsevier journal in 2021. The authors reported that the 2 new reviewers requested numerous corrections while the original reviewers provided minimal feedback. The paper has gone through multiple peer reviews, raising questions about the initial review quality. And there's a debate on whether post-publication peer reviews are biased or necessary for articles on controversial topics, which obviously COVID-19 myocarditis, vaccine myocarditis is. Oh, okay. So what do you think about this? As in post-publication peer review, inadequate peer review in the original rounds, all are concerning, aren't they?
I don't think there's any black and white with this, KK. I think there's a role for every type of peer review, whether it's open, closed, blind, anonymized, I shouldn't say blind, anonymized peer review, collaborative peer review. I think what this highlights is perhaps one example of maybe a slight miss in the initial review process that they're trying to correct. But applaud Elsevier for retracting the paper and applaud Sage for identifying these issues.
Right, and the reason, I mean, you mentioned bias. I think non-transparency. The point that peer review still I mean, I guess faces the peer review. The system itself is overloaded, and there are problems that we can solve with AI automation, and we are trying to solve.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and we're trying to solve some of those problems ourselves. We have the peer reviewer system that will support the work of the reviewer. Mm-hmm. So the author the publisher can decide to have a human plus AI peer review service where the reviewer writes the human reviewer writes the first review, and the AI can then just verify what's actually whether the review is accurate or not. Yeah. So this is a real live issue.
All right, moving on to the next paper, which has a very interesting title. Do men or women retract more? A study found the answer is complicated. It's total clickbait in my opinion, but anyway. So this is a Retraction Watch story on the gender difference in scientific paper retractions. It analyzes about 1 million articles. Mixed gender teams are more likely to face retractions, and mixed teams led by women less prone to retractions. Interesting. And single author papers less likely to be retracted than multi-author ones, and factors like open access and high impact journals increase retraction chances. Health and life sciences have higher retraction rates than social and physical sciences. I guess that's a trend in the field itself. And large teams over 10 authors have fewer retractions. And the last thing, gender inferences were made using authors' first names. As in analysis of the first names, whether it's a gender match to a female or a male profile, and with about 70% accuracy rate. So overall, interesting findings. I do not know whether it's relevant or not. Your question many a time, does it matter if it's a woman who's publishing and there are retraction trends related to it? But anyway, your thoughts.
I suppose if this does anything, if this changes maybe some of the rules around the type of peer review that takes place, depending on the kind of the nature of authorship, I do anything to you want to do anything to minimize kind of any kind of bias in the peer review process. But if there is a particular bias around certain groups of peer review, sizes of peer review, then maybe publishers can adapt their peer review processes, maybe add additional peer reviewers just to verify papers that might fall into certain categories. So maybe there's an opportunity there.
Yeah.
But no, as I say, if a publisher's not sure about their peer review process and would like to introduce more checks, and we can certainly help them through our research integrity checking process.
And I believe your cat also agrees to this last
can you hear her? Yeah, she's been very vocal. It's lunchtime.
It's lunchtime. I just visited a musical equipment store to repair one of my amplifiers, Tony, and I found a cat in heat, and she was all over me. Like, I don't know, she was rubbing all over me for the entirety of the duration that I was in.
Thank you for sharing.
You're always welcome. Moving on to the next story. This is, I guess, the story that we named the episode after. This is another story from Retraction Watch titled, A Joke Paper with Completely Irrelevant Citations Retracted. Okay, so this paper is retracted from the International Journal of Hydrogen Energy. The paper had irrelevant citations. So I'll read the points first. Added at the reviewer's insistence as a joke, the authors included references after pressure from reviewers. The citations were linked to two individuals, and the retraction notice stated that reviewers compromised the peer review process. Reviewers involved were removed from the journal's database, and authors resubmitted the paper for publication, and Elsevier is investigating the incident. But you can see that it's clearly stated in text, in plain black and white, that as strongly requested by the reviewers, here we cite some references, although they are completely irrelevant to the present work. So I don't know, is it absurdist enough for us to name the episode after Am The Walrus?
It's absurd that the review process should insist on adding irrelevant citations to a paper. If they can add no value, all they're doing is undermining the validity of that research, in my opinion.
Right. Tony, are you a big fan of pancakes?
Uh, what are you trying to say? um, at certain times of the year, yes, I do like a good pancake.
I was not trying to say anything. I was just trying to segue into this article from New York Times. It is titled "A Scientist is Paid to Study
Well, at
Maple
least you
Syrup."
say, Tony, you look like a man who eats a lot of pancakes. That's all.
But okay, continuing, he is also paid to promote it. This is research integrity concerns lots of conflicts of interest. So, researcher funded by the maple syrup industry has been promoting maple syrup as having significant health benefits. I think I might have subscribed to this because I eat a lot of pancakes and a lot of syrup, Tony. And so, this individual studies were funded by the industry and government, raising concerns about conflict of interest. The basic problem is that some of the claims have been exaggerated in terms of health benefits of the maple syrup. Other scientists, however, criticize his overstatement, the researcher's overstatement findings and misleading claims. Now, the author of the research papers has defended, saying that his belief in natural medicines and adherence to grand terms is okay from the point of, so it is his belief and he's fine with whatever he has stated. But it's very difficult to sort of separate conflicts of interest, even, especially when the funding is from the industry itself, right, Tony? And this is why conflict of interest statements are such an important part of the modern publishing rituals, and it's very important for authors to submit papers with these.
Yeah, and it's on the checklist for every publisher's part of their checking process. Is if there are any conflicts of interest, are they stated? Are they being open about that? Because if a conflict of interest isn't stated, then I think potentially, depending on how bad the case is, there may be grounds for a retraction.
Right. Now we have a bunch of quick.
So we can provide our Inago reports tool. If publishers need a tool that will check whether a paper's got a conflict of interest statement included, Inago reports will do that.
Right. We've got a long list of quick hits, so quickly going through them. The first one, a Nature correspondence article. China has already taken steps to reduce retractions of papers from its hospitals. We covered that in previous episode, that there are more retractions from hospitals in China, and some hospitals especially. So China has already taken effort to reduce this, and emphasizing, Tony, like we have discussed in the previous episode, proactive measures taken by the government as well as the entire research, I guess, the environment to ensure research integrity. Excellent steps.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, another example of the Chinese government or the Chinese universities and research organizations trying to clamp down on poor practices.
And another retraction watch story. Wiley Journal retracts over 200 more papers, and the hook in this is that some of these papers, or many of these papers, are because of third-party evidence of self-citation. Somebody else has pointed out that there are excessive self-citations. Yeah. So, Tony, why are self-citations considered to be, let's say, questionable, as well as, should there be mechanisms to detect self-citations?
There should be mechanisms to detect self-citations, and you know what? In previous publishing roles, we've even looked at kind of self-citations of practices around the world, and it's in certain countries, research from certain countries are more likely or more prone to cite themselves than others. At the end of the day, the researcher might think that his or her own research is the most important, most valid research to support their findings, but good research is open. Good research looks at the broader literature and we'll look at arguments from others as well. And I think if you've got a paper that's got too many self-citations and it's a little bit self-serving, you kind of wonder where the real value is.
Right. Moving on to the next story, which is interestingly related to Ukraine. So Amsterdam University Press reports the misuse of ISSNs in occupied Ukrainian territory. So the story is titled "Update from SUPRR: Misuse of ISSNs threaten academic integrity." So the illegitimate journals are using Ukrainian ISSNs, threatening academic integrity. So obviously there is spreading propaganda and disinformation internationally. So this is the first such ISSN hijacking that I've heard of. It's interesting.
I've never heard of this before.
Yeah, so interesting, and something to watch out for in terms of.
I think something that's deeply worrying because the ISSN, like the ISBN, is a unique identifier and should at least give some kind of stamp of approval or stamp of not approval of quality or that this is a valid
Hmm.
the publication is what it says it is.
Hmm.
And if those ISSNs, which have been legitimately provided to Ukrainian authorities, have been hijacked,
Hmm.
then it only undermines the validity of what's being published.
Yeah, something new to add to the research integrity checks that everybody is looking at. Now we have to look at ISS and hijacking as well. Now, talking about research integrity issues from India, an Indian university's channel on publishers platform disappears, and we talked about briefly this university. I'm not naming it. This institution university in a previous episode. So its channel has been removed from the Curious platform because of non-payment of fees, not because of any research integrity concerns, but at least, but it's been reported in Retraction Watch. But it has a history of questionable publication practices and self-citations included. So even though it has defended, the university has defended, saying that it's just because of non-payment, something to watch out for. If there's a lot of, I guess, flags related to this university. All
Yeah,
right.
and it just shows the importance of having these research integrity checks in place.
Right. 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 All right. The second last, I think the story. It's third last. This is an AI related story. Titled "Access to Future AI Models in OpenAI's API May Require a Verified ID." So this is interesting because I think there's a lot of usage that I think Sam Altman and team are unexpectedly receiving. I don't know if you're following AI related stories. Apparently, these simple things like thank you and please, these things that are sent out to OpenAI, as let's say Chat GPT, are consuming a lot of power, and the companies are losing because of it. And maybe that's why they're now asking for verified IDs. So government issued IDs needed from supported countries, and this is not for everything. One, as it's so specific, like API access for some developmental related use, and the whole aim is to prevent unsafe AI use and IP theft. And OpenAI has also blocked access to its services in China, maybe because of, let's say, illegitimate activities by Chinese, I guess, individuals using
Yeah,
OpenAI models. Anyway,
bad
interest.
actors.
Bad actors across the world, yes, using AI. So now, talking about AI hallucinations are causing problems in computer code as well. Now, the story's title, AI hallucinated code dependencies become a new supply chain risk. Tony, are you familiar with code injection and everything?
I've heard of it. Yes, yes.
Yeah, so basically, you can inject some text into code, and it can cause, let's say, bad things to happen to your computer or a phone, etc. And it's part of phishing and everything. Now, AI uh, helps, let's say, coders to generate code, and that has some tendencies, and that can be manipulated, and that can cause phishing related scams. This is the first
Yeah,
time, again, this is the first time I'm hearing this, and it is worrisome because if these I guess bots use these packages and package names and write code under it, within it, and you can obviously abuse it. This is something to keep an eye on, and this is probably the next AI gen detector that people will be asking for. AI code detectors, I suppose.
yeah. Well, how many organizations are using AI now to do some of this coding?
Yeah, yeah. And finally, the last story is from the Scholarly Kitchen. No one size fits all, the case for taking a national approach to PID adoption. So I just want to bring up the fact that I'm happy that persistent identifiers are being considered at the national level to ensure research integrity. And this is a wonderful article that you can read about how it's being done. Your
Yeah.
thoughts on persistent identifiers and the need for it in.
Well, I kind of rather naively thought once ORCID was invented, that
Mm,
was it. That would solve all the problems with disambiguation of authors. But of course, the reality is authors nothing to stop authors from creating multiple ORCID accounts.
right.
So anything that can help in disambiguating the author, PIDs being a very, very, very good example of that,
Yeah.
um, need to be encouraged because we want to be able to trust the research that's being published
Yeah.
and the validity of the researchers producing it.
This focuses on a research conducted by the Czech National Library of Technology. So it's focused on whatever happens in that part of the world, but
Yeah,
but at the same time it applies to the rest of the world, and wonderfully encapsulated in the sense that PIDs are important, despite we thinking naively that ORCID would solve everything. But nothing ever solves everything, Tony. And
No,
with,
but it's taking out chunks and making
yeah,
sure that it may not be 100% of the
yeah.
solution, but you're getting closer to the 100%.
All right, all right. That anyway. So that's the end of all the stories that we planned to cover. So Tony, any interesting song, gig, performance experience that you've had recently?
Um, I went to a concert on Friday, which was very interesting. It was a 3.5 hour long folk concert at the Birmingham Town Hall. It was kind of the history of English folk rock music.
Mm-hmm.
It was absolutely it was brilliant. It's bizarre how long it was, but it was a fantastic evening.
Interesting. So, quickly, I'll ask you to plug how listeners and viewers can watch all the 62 episodes before we end this episode.
Yeah, look, as I said at the top of this episode, please visit the Inago channel on YouTube, where you'll find the playlist for PubShorts, all 63 episodes, including this one. We're available there, so please subscribe, press like, share with your colleagues, make comments, dislike the articles. We welcome all contributions. And if you want to contact either KK or me, we're both available on LinkedIn, or you can contact me directly with ideas or suggestions or thoughts at tonyo@inago.com. And thank you to everyone who's written to me so far.
All right, all right. So anyway, Tony, until the next episode, this is Dr. KK signing off on behalf of Tony as well as the team that helps us in bringing such content to you. We will see you in the next one. Bye, Tony.
See you in the next one.